What is going on? Hopefully you can hear me okay and see me okay. Well, not see me, but see the stream. We're going to be working on the Deepkin elves using mostly contrast paint, but glazes and stuff. So put contrast paint in the title because we will be using that, but we'll be making our own or mixing our own with other pigments with the contrast paint. It's going to be an experiment and it should be pretty fun. And if it looks terrible, then oh well, we tried. So let me start out. I'm going to dry brush these guys, which I should have done yesterday. Apologize for that. But I am going to give them a dry brush of Rotten White, which is Vallejo Game Effects. I have no idea why this is an effect paint. It just seems like a really thick white paint. So if that's the effect, then it works. So I'll just, no, you can't even see that on camera. Definitely please let me know in the comments that you can hear me okay, and we'll get started. I'm going to use the number 2 Ghost Dry Brush here. This is going to further pop the zenithal prime. We'll just start on the little fishies, and I'm only going to go in a downward stroke. And that's just because I want to keep the bottoms dark. So there we go. This is just going to basically edge highlight all these models for us a little bit more. So that way when we use our contrast paint, they'll pop even more on the edges. You see that, how we're getting the edge of that cloak with this white? So contrast paint doesn't actually cover like this black at all very well, or any of even the dark gray. So where it covers the white, it should be its brightest, and where it covers the black, it should be pretty unnoticeable. So that's why we're taking this extra step here of dry brushing, just so there's a little bit more pop in the bright areas. This is a pretty fragile model here. Like, little, oh geez, he stuck to my hand. I think I almost just broke him. So yeah, he's got all kinds of fish. The other fish I just dry brushed first, they wrap around here on the front. And I felt like that would be a pain in the butt to paint around, so we're leaving them off. So yeah, like this cloak would be pretty unaffected by contrast paint because it's not light enough. But once we hit it back and forth with a dry brush of white, it's still going to be fairly unaffected, but the highlights will show. I purposely didn't, so when you do a zenithal prime, you get to control how much white paint you use and so on. And I purposely left these guys really dark. because I want it to be pretty dramatic as far as their light area and shadow area. So, which actually doesn't necessarily work that well with normal contrast paint, but what we're going to do is thin it down a bit, apply it kind of like a glaze. And tomorrow I'm going to be playing some Warcry. So I probably won't be staying up all night, maybe just about an hour and a half. So hopefully we can get to doing some painting. I should have had these dry brushed already, but also I'll show you here. I got the Minotaur Prime Black, but I don't have him Zenithal primed yet. And I decided to go ahead and put the shield on before painting, even though it's pretty easy to leave off and paint it. But I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. I think I can get everywhere underneath the shield, and since it's going to be covered by the shield anyway, I don't have to stress about, you know, getting too much detail into those areas. So yeah, these Deepkin are kind of zenithal primed with black, and then a kind of gray, bone gray kind of color, Israeli sand primer, and then white from above. And then we're reinforcing the white and the edges with our dry brush. So you can even further control where the light's hitting. Now if you really want to control it and make it even look better, which is a good idea depending on, you know, I'm trying to get these done nice but pretty quick. Like I want them to look good, but I also want to play with a fully painted Deepkin warband. But if you go back in with like black ink or a black wash like Nuln Oil and really reinforce shadow areas, it's basically the opposite of what I'm doing right now. So right now I'm dry brushing a white highlight to pop all the edges and the light details, but you could also be going in with Nuln Oil or a black ink and really reinforce shadow areas. But since I'll be using washes and stuff, possibly even an oil wash, those will fill in those dark areas for me. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that step. But yeah, if you were really trying to get the most out of your pre-shade zenithal prime, that'd be the way to do it. And the illusion's really pretty striking if you leave all the underneath dark. So even when you're painting in more opaque paint, like if some areas you go in with some more opaque paint, just make sure if it's on the underside it's dark, and they'll actually look like they're lit up pretty good. So it's a cool effect. Like I'm gonna leave, you know, even in there dark. So try to make them almost look like they're in a cinematic spotlight. And we're dry brushing with Rotten White from Game Effects. And like I said, I have actually no idea what the effect of this paint is other than it's a thick white paint. So I do like it for that. I don't think I'd buy it again. I bought it because I was curious what it even did. And it turns out it doesn't really do anything at all. So, except it's a thick white paint. And it being a kind of thicker white paint actually makes it pretty good for dry brushing. I just don't think I need a good white paint for dry brushing. I think I'd be fine in my life without it once it finishes, or once I finish the tube or pot or whatever. Jar. bottle, that's what it's called. Once I finish the bottle. Oh, a little hard to get the big dry brush in between the arm and whatnot, but that's okay. So you can really see, actually we got a little bit of white on there, but oh well. So dark from below, in some cases pretty much black, and then bright from above. This, with contrast paint, this works pretty good with some colors, maybe not that great with others, because it does not really affect the dark areas too much. It's transparent enough that it kind of leaves those just really dark and not very noticeable, but in this case we're going to try and use that to like the style of the finished model. But sometimes you might not want to do that. Usually if you were going to pre-shade for a contrast, I'd almost, the darkest areas, have it like only this dark, like a medium gray, and then go to light gray, pure white, and also use a lot more white from above in your airbrush, or in this case, you know, make sure you're dry brushing a lot of white on, because that's what the contrast paint's really gonna affect. But like I said, we're trying something almost like a special effect that we're planning on it leaving those areas really dark. And in a sense, if it works, I'm almost only gonna have to paint like half the model, right? Because the bottom half will be left in such dark shadow, we're almost only painting the top half of the models, which is kind of an interesting speed painting technique. Really good for board games. Like if you get a board game Kickstarter and it comes with, you know, 100, 200 miniatures, painting them like this, you can really save some time. And you don't have to worry too much about the kind of powdery finish of a white dry brush on the model, because hopefully that's covered up pretty nice by the contrast. So yeah, like on this leg here, yeah, maybe we bring down the dry brush a little down the leg, but I'm not going to try to put any underneath here. And actually, I just noticed there's kind of a spot on her too. So, all right. So that's it. That's the dry brush stage. Rinse off that and wipe it on a towel here. And like I've shown in zenithal priming without the airbrush, you could just prime, like you could just prime this guy black like this, and I could just take the dry brush and just start working over the details, and you see I'm getting that kind of effect right there. But it's faster with an airbrush, although you can certainly do it with your dry brushes. If you are interested in the brushes I'm using the Ghost brushes. There's a link to them in my descriptions of all my videos. They are my brand. They're really good. People love them. And they're successful on Kickstarter, and I highly recommend you give them a try if you're interested in trying a new brush. So even though I said I wasn't gonna, I'm gonna just put one little dab of black paint here. I think we'll go with that size 6 Ghost brush. This guy has been with me, I want to say over a year, and it's really on its way out. It's been getting, I used it really stabbing in on all that warcry terrain. But once once wet, it still holds a pretty darn good point. It's losing some of the hair. You can see some of the hairs are, a little shorter than they used to be, so they don't all come together at a tip. But they've been going really good. So. And I'm just going to take a little bit of this black paint and touch up that. What happened was I got some of the beach sand kind of base coat color on her knee pad under here. I just want to make sure, because it's really going to pop once the contrast is over it. So there we go. And I think there was another one that maybe had a little something, but I don't remember which one. So, I think it was maybe this guy. Yeah, this guy here. So actually we're going to just basically erase some of that. Maybe even a little bit on the thigh there. And the bottom of the foot. Okay, cool. So I use like little shells and stuff on all their bases, which I think look pretty cool. And I think they'll look really cool once they're done. Especially these ones that have the open shells. I took a little like silicone ball and put it in there, and I'll try to paint it like a pearl. So there'll be like a pearl in the open half shells here. A couple of them have that. This guy, or girl too. She's got the pearl in there. Maybe try I think it's called Mother Load, which is the clear color shift paint from Turbo Dark. Which is very pearlescent. So I'm going to start with the skin and see if we can't figure something out here. So there's 10 of them in a character, which would be 11. So I think what I'll end up doing is shifting the color a little bit. And then maybe every 4 models I'll shift the color. And that will give us some variation in our elves' skin tones. So that should be okay. So I think I'm going to use the base of like Militarum Green. And just for starters, I'm going to try mixing in a little bit of this Kraken skin, which is like a minty green. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of Militarum Green. And this would be fun on the wet palette, but I don't have a clean piece of paper on the wet palette right now. It's still the same sheet from when I did my unmade warband. So I decided not to use that because it was still, even though that was weeks ago, it's still wet enough that if I was using paint this thin on it, it would be picking up. So let's see what we can come up with. I'm going to go with contrast medium. All right, so let's get rid of this napkin. All right, so we got contrast medium, we got Militarum Green, and I'm going to try to tint it with this color here. So let's take a couple brushfuls of the medium here. Mix that together. This is Army Painter Kraken Skin mixed with contrast medium. And I don't have a perfect example to really test on. I think I'll just test on maybe this. So that just looks like thin Army Painter paint, as Army Painter always looks. Let's mix in some of their quick shade wash medium. Mostly just because when I get rid of this, I'll probably won't ever buy it again. So if I use it up, it's good. It works fine and great and all, but it's just I mostly use Flow Improver actually for this task. So, and let's take a brush full of the Militarum Green. Alright, so we got a pretty interesting green there. I actually like it. I'm going to go one more brush full of Militarum Green. It darkened it one more step. So it's kind of a nice dark neutral green. But we got to make sure it's... So that's pretty transparent. So... maybe we'll just add one little drop of water. And we'll give it a try. So there we go. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to mix up these tones. And then we're just going to give them a try. So we'll start with this lady right here. So I think... I don't know. Are they wearing pants? Hold on. Let me look at the box. According to the box, they are wearing pants. Let me just show you on camera to confirm. Those are pants. Okay. They're all wearing pants. So we're going to do 4 skins. What the heck? She wearing like a... okay. So I intend to wash these and highlight them. But we're going to see what we can get with our one layer. I wanted to do this sort of minty green skin tone. Which might be a little wood elfy or something, but... and I left their backpacks off. I don't know if I should have. But I did. So there we go. That's one. This is a little too opaque, I think. It's not leaving quite as much of the zenithal prime we did the work on through. But I think it's good enough, so we'll continue on with 3 more. I'm going to re-wet my brush, rinse it off. I'm going to go one more brush full of the contrast medium into here to maybe even thin it out a touch more. Maybe this guy will get the green. Normally with contrast I go fairly quick and just blob it on and then just paint as normal, but I do want to try to preserve some of the other areas around it so I can hit them with contrast too and keep it kind of clean without having to like repaint the kind of white area. So there we go. That's 2. I think. I'm gonna go in with a little more contrast medium into here. Probably be able to, well, hopefully see it really well on like him who has this kind of really exposed side area, but it's all pretty much black still because it's in shadow. So I think this is a fun kind of technique with the contrast paint. We're also exploring with just mixing them and making our own variations. You know, they don't make this kind of muted, neutral, more neutral anyway, desaturated green. There we go. I think they look pretty cool. So maybe we'll stick with the green, but just adjust our shade of green here. Then when I end up getting to the highlights, I think I'll end up going ahead and taking out the wet palette and mixing highlights, but focusing all the highlights on the top areas and trying to leave the undersides in dark shadows to sell the illusion that they're really kind of being lit up from above. Normally in like the old days of probably even a month ago, maybe not that recent, but you know, when painting a unit of archers, it would be like, oh, I'll just paint all 10 skin exactly the same, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's probably a little quicker, but this way you're going to get a little bit of variation in your models. So there we go, that's 4. So we'll do 4 more in a variation here. think how we're going to do that, I'm going to add a little bit of this livery green. It's like a real yellow green. So let's take 2 drops. Looks like just straight yellow on camera, which it's not totally wrong. And mix that in. I don't know if that actually mixed. I don't know if that was enough. I'm gonna go 2 more. There we go. I mean, I don't know if it's quite different enough. Let's see if we can test it on this. Yeah, that's pretty thin. So we'll just do 1 first, and if it's not quite different enough, we'll just do, I guess he'll just count as his own unique one. So it's definitely brighter. It's not a huge difference, but over the white areas, you can really see it being much brighter, like a much brighter green, and it barely even affects the dark areas at all, which is fine. That's one thing with this kind of technique, is you got to try to find the balance of how thin you want your paint, how transparent. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So just double check I got everywhere. And putting him next to the others, they're a little more yellow, so I guess that's fine. I mean, I was kind of expecting to go dark or drastically different in skin tones instead of real subtle shifts, just so there was a big variation, but subtle's fine. The next one, like the last 3 or whatever, I guess they'll get a darker skin tone. It's hard to kind of see on these female ones how it's separated with like chest armor and t-shirt. And I better double check on the first female one that I got between there. Cool. So yeah, if anybody's has any questions in the chat or comments, leave them down below. If you're watching this video in the future, always willing to chit chat and respond back. Figure this one might actually get some more views after the fact, because not a ton of well, there's quite a bit of contrast paint content on YouTube, but not a ton of people mixing it and stuff, so I think there's some value here. Alrighty, one more of this kind of lighter green. We'll do it on this knife guy. Old knifey. The risk I'm gonna run with my Deepkin though is they're gonna potentially look like Christmas elves, because they are elves. I'm doing them green. I was gonna do their bows in like a dark red metallic. That might, it's always a risk when you go red and green. You can get Christmas, which is not really super flattering for miniature color schemes. But one thing you can always do is adjust later. Like if the red is too red, I could add a wash of something else, that sort of thing. All right, I think this next one will take straight Militarum and use this lighter green to lighten it up. There we go. And this one should be the darker ones. One thing too, so this is a pretty subtle shift in skin tone variation. So even if it's not noticeable at all, it didn't take any extra time really. I mean, I mixed a little bit of yellow in one time and a little bit more Militarum green this time. So no big deal. If it's not 100% successful, whatever, we tried. I think this darker one might actually be working the best. Oftentimes it does seem like the darker contrast paints are a little better than the lighter ones. Cool. So they're all whatever. Yeah, the shift is maybe too subtle. Pretty interesting though, mixing a non-contrast paint with the contrast paint, with that Army Painter green I mixed in, or the Vallejo kind of green yellow I mixed in. Mixing the non-contrast paints in with the contrast paints to change the color, but using the contrast medium to still keep the properties of the contrast paint. I think that was a good experiment. I'm happy that worked. It looks a little better on the males because they have much more skin showing on their torso. So where it's really dark on their ribs, you can see it a lot better. The underpainting gradation of the black and stuff. Well, on the plus side, since nobody joined the chat on this one, I won't feel bad about not streaming very long tonight because I want to try to get to bed at a somewhat reasonable time. And that way I can be fresh and ready to play some Warcry tomorrow with some friends. So we've been gaming here at the apartment, which has been nice. To last maybe 4 weeks, we just started doing it. And it's been kind of nice to get to play. Since the game stores are basically closed. Alright. So the Deepkin. Normally I wouldn't leave my pots open like this, but I wasn't sure how this was going to work. So they all look very, very similar. Show you, so like this is a dark one, and this is a light one. I mean, they're different, but it's not probably different enough, so. Oh well. And they look a little orky, which is maybe not ideal as well. I think we can go. What do you think of their pants? I was thinking their bows would be like a dark metallic red, which well, here's the question. For example, I could do the bow, say a dark metallic red, but then do I do the armor plates that too? I don't think so. Actually, I think the best bet to try to avoid them looking like Christmas is to go really dark on their. I don't know about their cloaks quite yet. Could do a dark blue. Could do a really dark red. And then on their pants. Yeah, I guess I don't really have a. Didn't quite have this planned out. I figured I would just start slapping paint around, but since I'm working on 10 at a time here. Looks like on the box they gave them all kind of brown boots. So that's kind of cool. I think maybe even like a blue-black could be cool. Like a Drakenhof nightshade maybe. Do we dare? Drakenhof nightshade? Or maybe Pterodon turquoise? Or Drakenhof nightshade? Or even, we got this here, the muted turquoise. Let's see what that looks like real quick. Just on a... Oh man, that's like... Well, that's kind of a nice dark blue. Oh, okay, I'm coming out of stall here. This might not be the best stream ever anyway, so good thing I'm all by myself. talking to myself like a crazy person. So I don't think I want to go green, red, and blue. That seems kind of lame. So where's that Basilicum gray? Griff Charger gray. Black Templar. Actually, I don't even know if I own the Basilicum gray. I thought I owned all the contrast paints though. Space Wolves gray. Alright, well, anyway, that was a little kind of non-interesting demo and kind of mixing your own contrast. They're still darker from below, brighter from above in a single pass. Once they get a wash put on them and stuff, obviously things will start to change, but it's a good place to start. But I'm not totally sold on what I'm doing here, which means I think I might just call it. Yeah. Alright, so I'm just going to give it the call it, I guess. So thank you guys so much for watching. That was mixing contrast paints. If you found any joy in this, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully a little bit better than this one. Adios.